Morning. Thank you very much for attending today's informational meeting about the problem of the Whidbey Island jet noise that's impacting several communities in the Salish Sea area. Today's meeting is sponsored by the San Juan County Democrats. My name is David Dellendorf, and I'm the chair of the San Juan County Democrats. However, this is not an official meeting of our party. Instead, it is what we hope will be the first of many informational meetings that we will be sponsoring over the next year or so, open to both party supporters and the general public. Today's presentation will be made by the group Citizens of Eve's Reserve, or CORE. I think that's how you pronounce it, CORE?
Yes.
CORE. From the Coupeville area of Whidbey Island. CORE's representatives will be presenting information on the impact of noise from the U.S. Navy jet stationed in Oak Harbor on the personal lives of the residents of Island County, where Coupeville is located, San Juan County, and the Port Townsend area, and also details on the group's efforts to curtail and perhaps eliminate this noise. I want to emphasize that the San Juan County Democrats have not taken an official position on this subject. Before we start, I thought it'd be useful to know where the attendees of today's meetings live. So, if you don't mind, would you raise your hands if you're from San Juan Island? Wow, that's a great turnout. Thank you all for coming. How many of the residents of San Juan County live on the, I'd say, the southeast quadrant of the island? Okay, so if anybody hears the noise in our county, on our island, it's
are we the southeast? I don't know where we are.
I'd say yes.
Southwest. Well, let's say the south. Let's say the south end of the island.
Yeah,
okay, there we go. And of you, how many have heard this noise in a degree that it bothers you? You find it's a significant impact on your life. Okay. And then, is there anybody here not from either San Juan County or Whidbey Island? Okay.
Whidbey.
No, we said. Okay. Okay. Well, next, I'm going to introduce Ken Ricard, the founder and a board member of the CORE group. Ken is a retired attorney and third-generation resident of the Coupeville area. Ken will introduce the group's other members who are present today. The presentation, the official or formal presentation, I think will take about 45 minutes or so. And then there will be a Q&A period after that. And I hope you'll all stay for the Q&A, because that's when the interesting dialogue will take place. Although we do not have a representative from the U.S. Navy here today, I've asked the CORE group, to the best of their ability, to disclose what they understand the Navy's position is on this very issue. Please help yourselves to cookies and beverages in the back. There's restrooms on this back door to the left. And if you're so inclined, please leave a donation, a small donation, to help defray the cost of the rental halls. There's a wicker basket in the back. Thank you very much for coming.
All right. Great. Thank you, David. Thank the San Juan Democratic Party for hosting this event. Important to have a local connection. And thank you all for coming. It's great to see this turnout and so many kind, concerned faces in the audience. So thanks so much for coming. We're going to start off today, which we haven't done in our other forums we've held in other communities. This is the 5th public meeting that we've conducted. We had our first one in Port Townsend, our second one on Guaymas Island, our third one on Lopez Island, our fourth one in South Whidbey Island, and we're glad to be here sharing this with you today. But we're going to start out with a short documentary film that local filmmaker Mark and Melissa Dworkin on South Whidbey Island made for our website, because there was another informational type meeting here this week with a different group of citizens, and it was shown there, and Michael thought it would be worthwhile for you to see, so it's a 9-minute video, and then I'll make some comments and we'll get on with our presentation. Thank you.
love watching the Blue Angels. We went to so many Blue Angel performances. But I had never experienced touch and go noise, which is totally different.
Basically, we're training the pilots to land on aircraft carriers. And they just come down as if they're making a landing, where they catch that tail hook on a cable and arrest the plane.
Every bit of thrust they have is being ignited when they take back off up into the air. It is the most horrendous noise you have experienced, and it goes on some days and nights for 6 to 8 hours. It has dramatically affected all of our lives. It affects our work, it affects our sleeping at night, which again also affects other issues if we don't get enough sleep, because sometimes the planes fly until 1 o'clock at night.
It's very clear to me that the majority of people in this room would like to see a well-enclosed. I get that. But if that's successful and the people who are working on that are successful, that's going to be a long haul. And in the meanwhile, I still believe it's possible.
I'm 63 this month, so I've been in Coupeville pretty much all my life. And my grandparents came here in 1918. We had the general store. I grew up in it. I'm on this family land. I've got 2 houses here. Personally, I cannot live here with this. If something doesn't change, then I will have to leave. I can't stand it. I mean, I literally cannot stand the noise.
You cannot talk on the telephone inside the house. You can't have a conversation inside the house. It's impossible to live your life. It vibrates the water in your bathtub. It rattles your windows. It invades your body. It feels like you are being tortured. I grew up in Berlin, and I'm old enough to remember the war, WW2. And I feel, when those planes are flying, I feel like I'm back in war.
You know, we were at this meeting last night with the public affairs officer from the Naval Air Station. And one of our neighbors, he was irate because he just come from the children's Little League game, and right when the game started, they started flying. He had his sound meter with 110 decibels, I think he said. The children don't want to wear ear protectors because it's not cool, and his son wouldn't wear his because nobody else was wearing them, and all the kids were trying to plug their ears with their shoulders when the jets were going over. This is what the Navy's doing to us.
The whole area that these jets are flying over includes a National Historic Park. We have over 800 kids in a primary school, a middle school, and a high school who are going out, having after-school sports, trying to do homework at night. There's a hospital. The major hospital for the whole county is here in Coupeville. The jail, the county jail is here. I mean, all the county services are right here. So the whole hub of the whole island county is here, and it could be wiped out with one crash.
But we have over 400 homes filled with young families, retired people in Crash Zone 1, APZ-1, at the south end of the field.
Well, I think that there's a lot of alternatives for the United States Navy. Perhaps they could build more runways up at NAS Whidbey. that would be fine. They have the space there, they have a lot of acreage there. I certainly would like to see them build a safe runway for those young pilots in a place where there is no development, where they could make the noise that they need to make, where it isn't going to affect people. Don't get me wrong, I'm not at all against the military. I'm very pro. I'm a naturalized American citizen, so I'm very much in defense of this country. I love this country, but I would like for this hazard of the outlying field here in Coupeville to move. It is not my job to figure out where they should move to, but I want them gone.
The number of operations at OLF has increased 368% since 2008. We're fighting to permanently close OLF and end field carrier landing practices in the EV's reserve forever. We believe that our homes have gone down approximately 25% in value, at least, due to these overflights. When the transition to the Growlers was to occur, the Navy told us, and we believed them, that there were going to be fewer flights with quieter planes. And so none of us did anything. We were happy about that. It turns out the Growlers are significantly louder than the Prowlers. We've had teachers talk about the impacts on children of flying for multiple nights in a row, and then the children's behavior and performance at school the next day. We're working really hard to get the entire community involved. We need to get the schools on board. We need the Chamber of Commerce on board. We're trying to get the local realtors on board. We need all the organizations in this community to just state what they know to be true, and that is that we cannot live with this noise and it's harmful to us.
This noise is so destructive that if I am not willing to stand up and say, this is wrong, this is not okay, then who the heck will? This is how democracy works. We have to say, you know, to be a true American means that sometimes you're in conflict with policy. When it's not okay, we need to say it's not okay. And that's what we're all doing. This is not okay.
You didn't bring your accordion.
I was vetoed. Michael tells me that that was the loudest point of the video was 90 decibels. That was filmed at my house, and I get readings of 94 in my house.
In your
and 100 over 120 outside my house.
Oh.
And as we'll address some of the other statistics here in a minute. The thing is, well, we live in an incredible place, and we all know that, and that's why we've chosen to live in this part of the world. And this region, this northern Puget Sound, there's nothing like it. I know many of you have traveled, I've traveled many places in the world. I just did a sailing trip from Coupeville to Mexico and didn't see anything that approached this region on the entire trip. And the area has been acknowledged to be stunning by the establishment of national parks on the Olympics and the North Cascades National Park and the Whidbey's Landing National Historic Reserve and your National Historic Sites here on San Juan Island, the new parkland effort on the south end of Lopez Island. The the Salish Sea, I mean, it is full of accolades attesting to the incredible beauty and natural splendor that we have here and the reason we've all chosen to live here. And the Navy is essentially condemning northern Puget Sound with its activities. In my view, they are stealing away very arrogantly what we hold dear. And they have, in my opinion, no regard for the citizens for whom they serve. And they just go about their business and they don't really care about the impacts. And so we've decided that the Growler is just the wrong plane for this region. And I want to make it very clear, we're not anti-Navy, although personally, the more I've been involved in this, the less I like the Navy. But I didn't start out being anti-Navy. And we're not anti-Naval Air Station, Whidbey Island. And we're not anti a lot of things that the Navy does. But our group is of the belief that the Growler is just the wrong aircraft for this region. It's, you know, it's disconcerting when you see Trident subs go by and you know that each sub can blow up every city north of the equator in the entire world. But they go by, and they go by quietly, and then they're gone. But the Growlers don't, and their noise is impacting 4 counties around Naval Air Station, Whidbey Island. It's seriously degrading our quality of life. It's affecting our health. It's affecting our property values. And all of the reasons that we have gone to such effort and expense to live in this beautiful area are being taken away. Those values are being taken away from us. My point is that the Navy does not own northern Puget Sound. We own it. They act like they own it. They come in and they, with misrepresentation and lies, and transition to these new aircraft as if they own northern Puget Sound and all the sea and all the land. But they don't own hardly any of it. It's ours, it's yours. And this is our time to stand up for what is ours. In 2012, I have a cabin up on Lasqueti Island. It's up in the Georgia Strait. It's very quiet. It's a remote island. And I've been up there, spent a lot of the summer up there. And I came back and heard my first growlers in the summer, late summer, late August or early September of 2012. And it was so incredible that I developed atrial fibrillation and went into the emergency room and spent the night in the hospital all wired up, getting my heart checked out. And I came home and said, I'm going to have to move or do something about this. And as David said, I mean, my son's 4th generation Coupeville. We're on family land. I don't want to move, but it's intolerable. And I don't expect that you're getting the noise levels that we're getting, but certainly it's disturbing your peaceful enjoyment of your homes and your property and your kayak trip and your gardening and whatever it is, your hiking and all the things that we hold dear. So I decided we needed to start this group. So formed this corporation and this nonprofit. We have a great board of directors and we've been growing our membership. One of the first things we did was hire an acoustical engineer to do a noise study, Jerry Lilly report. Incidentally, if you go to our website, it's on all our paperwork back there. We have a great website. The Lilly report's on there. Everything that we're referencing tonight's on there for today. And lo and behold, we found out that in 2005, when the Navy started the transition to this new type of aircraft, now the old planes were loud, that's for sure. But we were all kind of surviving with that. They said they were going to fly fewer flights with quieter planes. So we were all, okay, cool, great, good news. And then the Growler showed up. We did our noise study, found out that for a number of reasons, the Growlers are significantly louder. It's a different frequency of sound. It's has almost affects you physically. And so that's the Jerry Lilly report. And then we took the Jerry Lilly report And we retain a number of occupational environmental health experts at Harborview Medical Center and the University of Washington in Seattle, and also Karen Bowman, who's an environmental health nurse in Seattle, and had them analyze and do literature reviews on the health impacts of noise, particularly this amount of noise and this kind of noise. And the health effects are enormous. You're going to hear about those today, some of them. It's interesting because two of our members were just saying, we've had some luck down in Coopville, and I want to get to this too. Our goal when we started was to close this little airstrip down, it's called the OLF Coopville, it's Outlying Field Coopville. It's a World War II emergency landing airstrip, very short, shorter than Navy requirements. And during the Vietnam War era, they decided it had been abandoned. All the time I grew up, we used to race cars on it, everything else was just a big hunk of cement out there. But they started training carrier pilots there in the Vietnam era. And they flew a lot of flights a year during the war, and then it tapered way down, and they got down to about 2,000 operations a year there with these not as loud planes, and we were living with it. But when these planes came, they ramped up their number of flights to about 12,000 a year at Coopville. People in Coopville were going crazy. I mean, we're still crazy. We're gone nuts. It's driven us all crazy. I mean, literally, it's been horrible. And of course, now we're spending all our time doing this instead of out doing what we want to do. But anyway, that was our goal. It still is our goal, is to close the OLF. We said, you don't need that. We live in a national historical reserve. This is just wrong. You can't do this to people. You can't intentionally damage our health and ruin our property values and ruin our lives, and it's just plain wrong. So we, along with getting the noise study and the health studies done, we also retained David Mann, an environmental attorney in Seattle, and filed a NEPA lawsuit. That's the National Environmental Policy Act. It's like SEPA, it requires environmental impact studies to be done on major actions that affect the environment. Because the Navy had lied in their 2005 environmental assessment when they said, fewer flights, quieter planes, no impact, bang, we're bringing these planes to Whidbey. And so we had them totally caught in their lies, and we brought the suit, and the Navy, as soon as we filed the lawsuit, they stopped flying at the OLF. And they conceded the lawsuit, essentially. They said, okay, we'll do an environmental impact statement. And we know that that's not going to solve the problem, because they do really flaky environmental impact statements, then you have to sue them again, challenging the adequacy of the environmental impact statement. And even if the environmental impact statement discloses major impacts, they can decide they're going to do that anyway because of national security, and that's their mission. So we're using the NEPA case just as one of our tools that we're using in our attack against the Navy, if you will. And so when now that they're flying a lot less, they didn't fly through the end, they said they were going to quit flying through the end of 2013 in May. And so they did, but they said they would start again after the first of this year. And so we were braced for that. And right after the first of the year, they've only flown twice down in Coopville. Very gingerly, 2 planes at a time only, instead of the usual 3 to 5 planes. And they've flown for about 2 hours, and they haven't flown since then. And every week we watch the paper for their flight schedule, and they say, no flying. They're not going to fly next week. And we're like, oh, thank God, you know, they're not flying. But we don't know what the Navy's doing. David wanted me to try to speak for the Navy. Impossible. We have no dialogue with the Navy. 2 years into this, we have no dialogue with the Navy. Zero. None. They don't talk. We don't know anything about why they're not flying, when they're going to fly. They've just repainted the lines on the runway out at OLF, so we think they're waiting to hammer us this summer. We don't know. But the result of that, getting to our goals, has been more flying out of NAS Whidbey and more impact on you. And what we've learned as we've gone out to other communities is that what's been good for us has been bad for you, and people on Lopez, and people on Guaymas, and people in La Conner, and Fidalgo. And so, while we're getting some relief, you're not. And so we've expanded our goals to include relocating the Growlers to another appropriate naval facility, a place like they have many to choose from. We've done a lot of research. They have bases scattered throughout the Mojave Desert and the desert in Nevada, Fallon Naval Air Station, China Lake, Lemoore, El Centro. They have many places where they can take these planes. They own 1 million acres around China Lake base, where they won't be bothering people and they won't be ruining this part of the world, which is what they're doing. And so our goal is to close the OLF and to get the Growlers out of Naval Air Station Whidbey Island and have planes that are less loud, or helicopters, or whatever they need to have, that aren't destroying our environment here in the Salish Sea. The reason we're here is that as much as we've tried and worked hard to get our senators and our congressmen, Rick Larson, and officials in the National Park Service and other agencies on our side of this issue, they are not listening to us, and they felt, I guess they believe we're just a small group of whiners on Central Whidbey, and it's not going to affect whether they get reelected or their image or their campaign contributions or whatever. And so we decided that we needed to reach out to our neighboring communities and see what was happening out there. And as we've done this, we've found that this issue is a regional issue. It's not just a little Coupeville issue anymore. And it's impacting all of our neighbors all around us. So we're here to give you information and facts and to awaken your voice and urge you to get a voice and use that voice and start speaking out, and to our representatives for you to get organized, form your own organization, and help you to do that. That's why we're here today. So we're going to have our next speaker, who's Michael Monson. Michael's a neighbor. One good thing about doing this is I've made new friends with my neighbors that I never knew before, and made some great friends, and that's been a real plus. We actually, despite the misery, are having fun with our little outings and so forth to all these communities and all our meetings. Anyway, Michael's going to talk about what's happening at Naval Air Station Whidbey Island, what the buildup is that's going on, and what it means to your community and all of our communities.
Okay, thanks, Ken. You want to get the postcards? One of the things that we are doing is helping you contact your representatives. So what we have done, we're going to hand out some postcards. These postcards are in a packet of 4, and each one, we've already addressed them. We're going to, hey, I know, I've gotten postcards, I've taken them home, and I haven't everything drawer, you know? And they're going to Inslee, to Larson, to Murray, and to Cantwell. Take a minute at some point today. Please fill them out. Give them back to us before you go, and we'll spring for the 34 cents. And that is, you know, the normal tendency is if we just gave you the postcard, you say, I'll take them home and fill them out later. And later becomes Thanksgiving and things like that. One of the things that we have noticed, and what is affecting you guys, is the flight paths. And here is OLF Coupeville down here. Up there is Alt Field. And you can see where Lopez and some of the islands are. Now, we thought, oh my, this is terrible. found out that these flight paths are not that nice little line. These things are 8 miles wide. So and another thing, these guys are student pilots. Yeah. Remember when you were learning how to drive? And that's what these people are. Right now we've got some guys from Australia. You know, they're practicing. One of the things that disturbed me the most was went on to the Deception Pass Park website. Do you know that there is a warning on the most visited park in the state of Washington? They have a warning. That's unconscionable. Can you imagine what's going to happen? People come up here and visit, and they say, oh man, I'm not going up there again. You know, the jet noise is too hard. Just can't take it. Okay. You saw the growlers, you heard them, 90 decibels, and that's on a little recording. We're getting up to 134 decibels. Now it increases, it doubles every 10 decibels. What's that figure? I think it, you know.
It's exponential, I guess.
It's what?
Yeah.
Exponential. Yeah.
Every
It's a lot.
decibel's like twice as loud.
Yeah, so it's absolutely amazing. Okay, a growler. Each growler is $80 million a piece. Now that's a lot of money. But I don't know what $80 million looks like. I have no idea. Pile that high, pile that high. Depends on if ones, fives, or tens, I guess. $80 million would run the entire San Juan County for a year and a half. One plane, the entire county, for a year and a half. So you guys kind of get to make the decision, actually. You know, run the county, growlers, run the county. Oh, what do you want to do this year? Do you want to run the county with the health, the welfare, the children, the education, the senior citizens? Or do you want to have a growler coming over you flying and ruining your health and hearing? We're the taxpayers. We're the voters. This should make our decision pretty easy. The entire program for the growlers costs $13.8 billion. I didn't even get to that. I don't know how many years that would run San Juan County. I'll bet a lot. Is there a savant here that can figure out, you know, 21 years, 17 hours, and 5 minutes? It's insane. Now, there are 79 at Whidbey right now. We think. And I say we think. Because like Ken said, they won't let us know. They won't talk to us. They won't tell us anything. They won't give us any information whatsoever. And I suppose a lot of you know the complaint line has been switched over to an automated line. You don't even get to talk to a human anymore. The current number, like I said, it's not disclosed. We do know 135 of these monsters are going to be bought by the Navy. And all of them will be stationed at Naval Air Station, Whidbey Is. Every single one. 79 now, 135 to come. You ain't seen nothing yet. And they will be doing 47,000 operations a year. Landing, takeoffs, that kind of stuff. Okay, another one. We've got the P8. Hardly anybody knows about this one. This is the one that's going to be replacing the P3. That cool little propeller-driven thing. That's nice. A P8? It's a 737 taking off and landing and coming right down your alley. These guys are going to be practicing right up and down here, down the street. Get used to it, people. You ain't seen nothing yet. These planes, one single plane, $179 million. Okay, we've done the exercise already. Now we know. 3 years this would run San Juan County. One plane, 3 years. Do the weighing again. Which would you prefer? Run San Juan County for 3 years or have a 737 dumping who knows how many decibels on top of your head, ruining your children's health, ruining your health, and everything like that? Or would you rather have a peaceful environment, enjoy working in your yard? When my wife and I moved to our house in 2003, we didn't know anything about the growlers. They weren't there. Then one day I was out working in the yard, and a prowler, which is before the growler, flew over. And I was proud. Hey man, it's one of ours, far out. Then the second one flew over, and the third one flew over, and the fourth one flew over. And I said, wait a minute, something's going on here. In Island County, we're supposed to get what they call a noise disclosure. My noise disclosure said you may be exposed to airport noise. I don't see any major airports on Whidbey Island. I can't catch a flight to Las Vegas. I can't catch a flight to anywhere. So, airport noise, what are you talking about? Oh. NASWI is considered an airport. $34 billion is this program cost. I don't even know what $34 billion is. Okay, 10 to 11,000 plus operations a year by 2020. That's terrible. Now, this is just one of the depictions of the flight paths. And you can see, they don't stop at the edge there. They all go off the edge. There's, you know, there's one of the islands, and you see these guys. These are just a small river. Look at what Condor. Look at what they're getting. Look at Camino Island. Look what they're getting. This is not right. And Kate Andrews is going to now, she's going to tell you what this is doing to you. Give me a sec to get that.
Remember to do the PowerPoint.
You know.
My name's Kate Andrews. We moved to Whidbey Island in September of 2012. And I joined this group and became a board member in October of 2012. I was a hearing loss virgin when I moved to Whidbey Island. We had, as Ken and Michael mentioned, we had Karen Bowman and two other people at the University of Washington. We had Jerry Lilly, but we have also done a number, I can't even count how many, maybe 14, FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests from the Navy. So many of the health impact statements that we reference are the Navy's own, and sometimes they're better than the other ones because they have more funding, they can do more studies, particularly when it comes to the fetus, the development of the fetus. The Navy has done extensive testing on that. Okay. Maximum Washington State, World Health Organization, EPA set standards of between 55 decibels in the daytime and 30 decibels at night. And again, we plot them. The Jerry Lilly study has proven that when they fly over our homes, inside our homes they're at 95 decibels, outside they're 134 decibels. Oops, wrong way. One of the things, it isn't just our ears. When I first started in this, I thought it was just our ears that were being damaged, that people were going deaf and that was the end of it. Turns out that that's actually the least of it, if you can measure it as the least of it. What happens is, as Ken referenced, hypertension, myocardial infarction, diabetes due to raised cortisol levels, particularly at night, because the ear doesn't sleep. You think you're sleeping at night when the jets are flying, but your ear is always awake. And that raises your cortisol levels, which leads to diabetes. We've also linked it to, the studies have linked the noise levels to hypertension, as I said, ADD, ADHD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, and raising blood pressure. Cardiovascular disease is probably the biggest one. Heart attack and cardiovascular disease. One of the studies that the Navy did was on the impact of this type of noise on the fetus, pregnant women and the fetus. And what they showed was that a pregnant woman exposed to more than 85 decibels during the day for over an hour can expect her fetus to have lack of cognitive level development, and it can expect to be born with high frequency and low frequency hearing loss. So not to mention heart attacks, but the babies and the children are being impacted as much or more than we are. The things that are happening that I'm encouraged by, I get all the emails and I get all the calls. If you call the hotline, it comes to my computer. So I've responded to a lot of you, I've talked to a lot of you, I've emailed some of you, especially on Lopez Island. But what's happening is the community is building. That's how we're going to change this, is through building our community of people who say, you know, from the movie, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. People in La Conner, people in Mount Vernon, people in Guaymas, people in Lopez, people in Port Townsend, people in Langley, people all over this area are banding together, and that's how we're going to change it. So thank you so much for having us, and thank you for being here today. This is Marion Atwood, another board member.
Hi, I just want to say thank you again. This is such a gorgeous Grange Hall. I'm a member of the Grange down in Coopville, and this is like the palace here. I just wanted to say something on the heels of Kate's studies about health, because when that film was done, my blood pressure at that time, we were experiencing that 300% increase of the growlers. My house is getting some of that 132 decibel readings 6 to 8 hours at night. My blood pressure at that time was about 170 over 80. So I'm happy to say we have stopped the growlers flying, we think, for about 9 months. My blood pressure is now 120 over 68. So I'm a living, breathing example of the cardiac impact of this aircraft. The Navy knows about this impact. It's very well aware of it, and they just are not very interested in the civilian population. They have their mission, which is their mission, and then there's the rest of us, and we are not part of it. And so I feel like we're kind of the canaries in the mine. We found our voice, you know, because we had to survive, because it was so terrible. You heard some of the noise we've been experiencing. And we are here to warn the rest of you that, you know, there's 79 growlers now, but there's going to be 145. And they are going to fly over all of the airspace that they have paths and they have permission to fly in. They're going to use every one that they have in their little toolbox of flight plans. So, and the P-8s who used to be propeller, the P-3s that used to be propeller planes, they are 737s, and they are also going to be using those expanded pathways. So they are going to be using all those little lines that you saw, and they are coming, as Michael said, over you. They're coming your way. And so what I wanted to do was tell you some of the context. You know, it's like Ken was saying, you know, we started off, we were just going to close that airfield, by golly, and we started finding out, oh my gosh, the health impact. We have to tell people, the noise is like ruining people's lives. You only have so many little cells in your ear, and once those little hair cells are destroyed, it doesn't hurt you when it's happening, but you are losing your hearing, and eventually you will be deaf. And it can happen with one-time flight. It can happen to you. So, oh my gosh, we have to tell people about that. And so the more that we have learned, and we've been at this now for almost 2 years, we know a lot, and we know we're giving you a lot of information. It may be a little overwhelming for some of you, but we are now, we have a lot of information to share with all of you, and we're really happy to do that. So we want to tell you some of the other things that are happening and why this is happening. In 2013, one of the Navy admirals basically said, we are moving to western United States. 60% of our operations are going to be on the West Coast by the end of this decade. So that means that they're going to use every little piece of land, every airspace they have, because they have a lot of ships and planes and personnel. So 60% of the Navy is going to be here, which means more planes, more infrastructure, more ships, more people, more impact on our state. So think about that for a moment. Oh, I have to pay with this thing.
Sorry,
Okay.
you're going back there.
So think about that. So here's the states and our status. Washington is in the top 10. The Navy already owns, we're up in the top 10. They already own a lot of land here. But they're not just buying land, they're also acquiring space from like the State Department of Ecology and Preservation. They, the whole area down to the Hood Canal, the state of Washington just gave the Navy an easement so that they could get their subs. I don't know how many thousands of acres that is. The influence, you know, when you start thinking about this as a citizen in a democracy, which is kind of where part of my interest is. My grandparents were from Scotland, and my grandfather used to plant the American flag wherever he lived. And so, you know, it's not a spectator sport. You know, you have to be involved to make it work. So the problem with the military or a big corporation owning a big chunk of the state of Washington is that they start to influence the policies and rules and people's attitudes. Like, people in Coopville were afraid to even say, "Ooh, I'm against the jets," because it had become so ingrained, because it was so big and powerful. They felt like they were in danger to speak out. And so we've gotten past that, and we want to help others move past that, because this is our land, not their land. And, oh, that's the thing, I keep forgetting. What did I just do? Wrong one. I don't want that. Here it
I
is.
got you. Just tell me when you want to do slide.
Okay, well, I don't want that thing. How do I get that out?
I don't have it on my screen. Wait, hit exit, I guess.
I can't see that. So this is the other thing, and I know that Wendy had some information in the back about this, the Northwest Training and Testing Center, which some of the folks on the San Juans actually are participating in. There was a complaint filed against the Navy about the training and testing site, which they want to expand, and they will be finishing their EIS at the end of March. And there are, yeah, you need it. So March 25th, there's a little piece of paper down there to remind you and who to send your information to. But this is going to include anti-submarine warfare exercises, surface-to-air gunnery and missile exercises out here. 126,000 square nautical miles, right out here. The Navy is going to be practicing all of these things. Air-to-surface bombing exercises, testing for new weapons, and the use of sonar, which is, they estimate in the complaint, which the Friends of the San Juans have been a part of, Friends of the Earth and the National Resource Defense Council, and a few others have joined in a complaint against the Navy about this training site. Because it's going to impact about 650 mammals in the first 5 years.
650,000.
I mean, 650,000 mammals in the first 5 years. And kind of, you know, it's like, okay, so I moved here and, you know, like the icons, the spiritual icons of this region of the world are the salmon, and the orca, and the eagle, are three iconic symbols of this region. Each one of those icons are going to be diminished with the movement of the Navy into this region. So the Growlers sit in this context. They're going to be involved in this training center. There's going to be 60% more of the Navy here, and they're just expanding out into the space because we aren't saying that this is our land, our air, and our water. And is there another one? So this is the picture of the maps, and you can see this in the back. This is their area that they're going to be training in, and you can go online and see this too. It's on our website as well. And there was a map at the very, or a little slide at the very beginning, which kind of takes me as an American citizen, you know, like all the polls across the country have been that Americans really want less money spent on defense. And so the question arises in my mind, how much is enough? How many Growlers are enough? You know, how many P-8s are enough? How many ships are enough? The military budget is now, if you could get back to that wavelength, military budget, depending on how you,
There you go.
look at it, is between, it's the big blue piece of the pie. It's between 50 and 60% of our federal budget. And the stuff that we care about, education, research, environment, we're all fighting over the 10%, whether we're going to give, you know, food stamps to senior citizens or to little kids. So ultimately, you know, as an American citizen, I feel like we need to step up and start participating in our democracy and saying, you know, this doesn't make sense, or it does make sense. And to say no where we feel like it's important to say no. And where we feel, and back to our mission, is we feel it is inappropriate for this machine, this Growler, to be exercising itself over our land and sea in an area that is not appropriate for this military machine. And it needs to be in one of several places, you know, Fallon, El Centro, China Lake, someplace where it isn't going to hurt babies and children, people trying to conduct their lives, other mammals, birds, fish, wildlife. And so we're here today to take your questions, urge you to action, and
Rick is good.
and Rick is going to do a little summary.
I'm just going to do a little finish up here and then.
All right.
Thanks, Mary.
Yeah.
I wanted to tell you that we are taking our fight to Washington, D.C. next Sunday. Michael and myself and Marion are going to spend a week in Washington, D.C. We're leaving next Sunday. Not looking forward to the trip. I had to go buy new clothes for the trip. And, but it's a little different here, I think, for you, maybe, hopefully, in San Juan County. In Island County, we've had basically just resistance on the part of our county commissioners and our electeds, our local electeds, because they are solely focused on the money that the Navy brings to Whidbey Island. And they're afraid to take any position that might upset.
Councilman, that's under side.
That might upset that flow of money. And so we're done trying to get the attention or the support of our local officials and the actions in D.C. So I've spent the last 2 months organizing 7 meetings that we'll be having not this week coming, but the next week. We're leaving the 23rd in D.C. with Rick Larson and Patty Murray and Maria Cantwell, and we actually have a meeting at the Pentagon. We're going to the Pentagon, and we're seeing a lot of important bureaucrats at the National Park Service and various agencies in D.C. So one thing that you can do to help is next week, this week, starting today when you go home, is that you can start emailing and calling and bugging your representatives. Because we've noticed a slight change in the reception that we've been getting at DC since we've been conducting these meetings in other areas outside of our own. That they're starting to get the message that this is a regional issue, that it's affecting a broader range of their constituency, and it's helping. So I would urge all of you to, every time that the Growler flies over and you're upset by it, get on their websites. They have these little email forms you can fill out. Call them, have your neighbors call them, write them, go to their coffees when they're in the area, and reach out and let your representatives know, but especially do it before the 23rd, so that when we get there, you'll have worked them over for us, and we'll get even a better reception. The other thing that you could do is form your own organization here in your county. I think there's something happening on Lopez, and speak your own voice and address your own concerns, and let everybody in DC and your local government and state government know how this is impacting your bed and breakfast, or your kayak touring company, or your hiking trips that you take, or whatever it is you like to do. And speak out. It's time that you need to just find your voice and let it out. And lastly, you can join CORE and support us. We've spent about $40,000 so far that we've raised in Coopville. But all of this costs a lot of money. It takes a lot of effort and time. None of us, of course, we're all volunteers, but just the attorney fees and so forth. So if you're inclined to help support us, we'd appreciate that. And I'll turn it over to Rick Abrahams, who's going to close up. And then we'll have question and answer.
Could I say something?
Yeah.
Okay. Just a second. I mentioned earlier that the San Juan County Democrats have not taken a position on this issue, but that can certainly change if the public speaks up and asks us to take a position. If you're an active Democrat or an inactive Democrat, if you consider yourself a Democrat, you can come to our meeting on April 12. The location and time is to be announced. But at the April 12 meeting, we will be developing our resolutions and platform that will be passed on to the Democratic State Convention in Spokane, which occurs in May or June. I'm not sure when it is. But we and all other county Democratic organizations will be sending to the state Democrats our resolutions and our platform. And if we have enough people who consider themselves Democrats come to our meeting on the 12th and discuss this issue and ask our local Democratic Party to pass a resolution, we will discuss it and we will consider approving that type of resolution. So and I think the more people who know about this problem, this has been a real eye-opener for me. I think the likelihood is that we will do something to support this. Thank you.
Before you go, please fill out the postcards. Like I said, we will spring for the 34 cents and mail them for you. Because the tendency is, you know, you take the postcards home, I have an everything drawer, and Jane smacks me every once in a while. When are you going to clean out the everything drawer? You know, one of those things. We'd be happy to mail them for you. Just if it's something as simple as get the growlers out of my airspace and sign it. We'll mail it in. You know, you can do that 4 times. They're not going to know you're saying the same thing. I don't think they talk to each other.
I think the question for this community is the question that we had to ask on Whidbey Island. And that is, can we trust the Navy? Can we believe the Navy? When they tell us that they're going to do all of these things on the water, over the water, under the water, and they're not going to cause us harm. And I think what happened on Whidbey Island is a lesson, and it sends a message, and it should send a message to communities like yours, and that is that you cannot trust the Navy. They misrepresented the numbers of flights, they misrepresented the levels of noise, and they didn't tell the truth. And they said there would be no harms, and there were harms. So when they have all these plans for this national or Northwest Training and Testing project, which involves sonar, underwater explosions, weapons testing, are we to believe them? And if you look at what they've done while people are watching, what they've done knowingly, flown these planes, saturated communities, schools, homes with hazardous levels of noise. They've done that. 6 schools, you know, in other areas. We finally got some actual, not averaged noise levels, but actual levels. 4 of the schools over 100 decibels, 2 schools 90 and up. That's the kind of levels that can damage hearing, certainly impair learning. That's the kind of thing that the Navy is doing while we're watching. Now, what are they going to do when we're not watching? What are they going to do out in the Puget Sound in our public waters? Can we trust them? That's a decision, you know, each of us has to make, and we have to act on that decision. We can't trust them on Whidbey Island. You know, I moved here from Texas. You know, I'm not a local, but this was a piece of the paradise, like a lot of people. This is where I came to enjoy life, and you know, the problems follow us. There's no getting away from it. I don't care where you live. You know, you have to get involved. You have to act, and that's what's happened to me. And that's what's happened to everyone else, and that's what's going to happen to you. You either get involved, or you act, or you watch your quality of life. You watch what you've worked for. You watch it slip away. Not only for you, but for the children and grandchildren behind you. So we appreciate the opportunity to come, and I guess any questions people have now, we're going to hopefully be able to answer. You want me to take a few questions? Let's start with here. Yes, ma'am.
So you said that the Navy's going to be conducting an EIS on the Growlers. What about the PAs? Did they do an EIS?
Yep. They are in the process of. They've done one on the P8s, and I think they've identified the number that are coming. I think it's 57. They're not here yet. I think they're going to start arriving this year, and they will replace those propellers here in the plane.
Yeah, they just finished the draft EIS.
Right.
Is there a comment period for the P8s right now?
There was one comment period that's ended. I think there will be another one with the final environmental impact statement comes out. So there will be another opportunity to say something. But let me just say this, don't let the Navy tell you when it's appropriate and not appropriate to comment and to get involved. They've set up a box. They've given you what they think are your only opportunities to speak out, and you cannot play by their rules or you will lose. So you speak out when it's appropriate, if not to them in that environmental impact statement process, to your elected officials. Yes, sir.
So when we were hearing about the opposition from the Navy to moving these planes and everything, I also was thinking, like somebody commented, there's a tremendous amount of economic benefit to parts of the community from having the Navy there and having all of this stuff. So can anybody say more about who benefits outside the Navy from having this there, and what kind of resistance you've been having, just what that's been like?
Well, I'm a small business owner in Coopville, and I can tell you that we're impacted dramatically. We can't talk to customers. It discourages people from coming in. Now that the Navy has put cement blocks around, militarized the field, they put 1,000 cement blocks around that OLF field that says property of the U.S. Navy. Yeah. So on the entry into Coopville now, it looks like we're a military base, and that's discouraged people from coming. But the economic impact of military spending, if you look at those figures and the multiplier effect of funds spent, the multiplier effect right now in this year, $1 for Navy, it's less than $1 back that you get. So yes, the military does create jobs, but it's almost the worst way you can get money back into your community. There's very little multiplier on military money. Whereas if you spent $1, into education, it would be like $22 back into the community. So almost any other figure, you can go and look at a lot of charts, we have some in other presentations, but you can go look at multiplier effects in other sectors of the economy, they're all higher than the military multiplier. So when people say jets equal jobs and the military equal jobs, yes, that is true, it does create jobs, but it's the worst multiplier of all your other choices.
So,
Does that answer the question?
Most of the money goes into Oak Harbor. It takes money away from you. Out here, your income is not derived from the Navy, it's derived from tourism, mainly. And as you saw that thing at Deception Pass Park, people will stay away in droves. So in this area, the military is a drain on your money.
Especially
It's not
voting.
adding.
I mean, you do
Well,
voting.
my question was, who are the vested interests outside the Navy who are saying we're going to lose economically? Who else is
Chamber of
fighting?
Commerce.
Chamber of
Chamber of
Commerce.
Commerce,
Commissioners.
Boeing, real estate.
Boeing, yeah. Boeing, both of these planes, the P-8 and the Growler are both Boeing planes.
What does Boeing care if we have the planes here or in the Mojave Desert?
It doesn't really make any difference. Yeah, I just,
It's our elected officials. In fact, the military has done studies, the Department of Defense, where they wanted to close bases. We don't know if this was on that list or not, but the elected officials, the congressmen, the senators, they're the ones that are keeping those bases open because they get to brag that they're bringing in jobs, helping the economy with our tax money. But, yes, sir, right here, then I'll work my way back.
I'm just curious, since they've stopped flying out of OLF, how does the noise level in Coopville diminish? How significantly? I mean,
we still get overflight and significant overflight, but at higher elevations. You know, we're not getting the 300 to 500 foot level.
yeah.
I know where I live, a lot of that film was filmed at my house, and they were very low, and it's markedly.
What are your decimal readings now?
You know, I haven't measured lately, but I'm super sensitive to it, so when I hear one fly over, even at altitude, I'm afraid they're gonna come and start touch and go again, so I start getting all anxious and stressed out. But it's not horrible.
most of the noise we're hearing right now is the Growlers going somewhere else. They're on their way to wherever it is they're training.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know if there'll be an independent review of the environmental impact statement?
Just by us,
That's right. We're the independent.
our experts.
I say this because I worked for a little while for the Forest Service and was involved in writing one, and the young rangers were all excited when we were doing this and said, yeah, go, you go. And then when it was shown to some of the veteran officers there, they said, no, rewrite it like this one.
Right. We're expecting a poor quality EIS. And that's another thing that we're trying to raise money for, because we didn't dismiss our case when they conceded. They wanted us to dismiss our case, and we said, no, we're going to keep our case open. And so we entered into an agreement with the Navy through their attorneys to keep our case pending. So it's still pending, such that when the EIS is done and we need to challenge the sufficiency of it, we don't have to start over again and serve the papers and just reinstitute a new case. So we're expecting a poor job.
Yeah, we're aware of the fact that the EIS will not get rid of the Growlers. It won't. We're aware of that.
It's not an option.
Yeah, they have no action, a little action, and a lot of action. That are the only three, and right now we're trying to find out if the Navy has ever even had a no-action response. We don't think so. The way to get rid of the Growlers is with the postcards in your hands. This is going to be a political decision, not a military decision.
Right, I just want to follow up on that. We've talked to a lot of attorneys around the country where other communities have battled the military. I mean, right now, there's a big fight in Key West and the Keys, over the Florida Keys. because they're doing exactly the same thing there that they're doing to us here. And they're basically just taking their land and air away from these people. Very similar situation. And we've been told by attorneys who fought the case, gone all the way with the citizens, that ultimately it's we the people who are the bosses. And that is the way that this decision will be decided. It isn't going to be by the rightness of our cause or a great EIS. It's going to be the people of this region saying, no, we've had enough, we're not taking any more.
Can I double up on that, just to remind, because I was speaking with a National Park Service official about this recently, had a lengthy visit, and because of our EV's reserve being administered under the National Park System. And I said, what is the National Park Service doing about this? How come you're not out there protecting this park? Where are you? You spent millions of dollars creating this park, and it's being trashed. Why aren't you protecting it? And he said, well, we don't tell the Navy what to do. Nobody tells the Navy what to do except the citizens. And so even though we all feel like just lowly peons with no voice in what's going on in this country, I do, I don't know about you, this is what I'm hearing from a veteran bureaucrat at the federal level, is that it is the citizens that are going to make the difference here.
Yes, sir.
I wouldn't count on getting any action from Rick Larson. Because if you look at his contributors, they're the military contractors.
We're well aware.
Well, let me make a suggestion then, because he's vulnerable in several areas. If you come to a meeting tomorrow with Lovell, you'll see all about the coal terminal, which he's also for. So let me make the suggestion, guys. Find somebody, for God's sakes, to run against Larson. Please. The filing time, I think, is the middle of May. Find somebody. I think the Democrats here will back him, and you guys will probably back him.
We hear that at every meeting we've been to. So.
Well.
Yes, ma'am.
Where's that person?
Where's the person?
Well, it's not me from Texas.
I'm Cynthia Dilling from Lopez, and we just want to thank you so much for putting this on over here. I've learned some new things too, and for anybody here, you San Juan folks, these guys came over and spoke to us. We were able to get a lot of information to our people, and we formed an acting committee of about 15 people, and we've been able to really spread the word. And I love your idea of postcards, and it's so important to keep doing this. Do it as much as you can until the 23rd. These guys are spending such a lot of time, energy, money to get back to DC, so let's give them our support. We wrote out a green sheet that gives ideas for what you can write on your postcards and what you can say in emails, addresses on the back. I'll put it back here. But do the postcards first. That's a superb idea. We've also got an ad coming out in the paper. We've got a few extra ones of these, and if anybody wants to put some up around, there's just a few, but around Friday Harbor or whatever, we're glad to share them. And we've also got a local cartoonist that did sort of a funny thing. It's based on the Lopez group, but I think it might have an effect for you. I'll put these back here.
Right.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, ma'am.
We're on the north central part of San Juan Island. We can feel the growlers. And I wanted two questions. One is, what is it that I'm feeling scientifically, audibly? What is that called? And then also, since I'm so much farther north, is orcas, do you have any information from people on orcas that they're interested in this? I'm just wondering why you would conclude.
Let me address just the first part about what you're feeling, because what you will hear the Navy say is that the growlers don't make as much noise as their predecessors, the prowlers, when in fact they make different kinds of sound. And the growlers make more of the sound at the low-level vibration that rattles windows, the kind that you feel. So it's a different kind of sound. Otherwise, they're fairly close. But what the Navy does is they average sound over a period of time. Now, if they increase the number of flights within that average period of time, it changes the noise contours, and that's what they've done. They make predictions. It's only going to make so much noise. But when they do more flights than they say, when they change the flight paths, people experience it differently. Just like those kids at that elementary school, they don't experience noise spread out over a year. They experience every time a jet flies over, 90, 110 decibels. So and that's how we feel it. So
and we haven't had any input regarding the orcas or the impacts on the orcas. I just want.
They make complaints from orcas.
No, orcas as in whales.
Oh, orcas. I said orcas island.
I meant Orcas Island.
Oh, I thought you meant orcas.
Well, we get complaints from orcas. In fact, I heard the Navy representative at one of these EIS hearings walked around just kind of scratching her head saying, you know, we get complaints there, but I can't imagine where it's from. And then she said, but you know what? They do run-ups. They do flights, but they do stationary run-ups where they put these engines on the blocks and run them day and night. And
that's what you're hearing.
Yeah, because we hear like a sound, it sounds like it just goes on and on like a wind, we thought we were testing like a wind tunnel.
That's a run-up. That's a run-up.
That's maintenance. And so the number of those run-ups changes with the number of, if they increase operations or maintenance, they're more run-ups. So when their predictions of noise are based on a limited number of operations and a limited number of run-ups, you're not getting the reality of what's going to happen.
They lie.
And that's what's happening.
Can I just mention one thing that I forgot to say, and that is that our board has decided that we want to expand the size of our board. Since our goals have changed from our local issue to becoming a regional issue, so we are actively looking for a board member from your area, and we're looking for a board member over in Jefferson County, around Port Townsend, Squim area. So if you or anybody you know wants to serve on our board, we're going to expand the size of our board and have a more balanced regional makeup on our board. So just want to put that out there. Yes? Oh, go ahead.
He had his hand up a minute ago first.
I assume the Chamber of Commerce in Oak Harbor is a lost cause for obvious reasons. But what about in Coopville and Port Townsend? What about the real estate industry, the realtors, the developers, the Chamber of Commerce, the tourism board, whatever?
Yeah.
Have they gotten behind you?
I'll speak that. We have tried. Our Chamber of Commerce will not let us make this presentation to their board. And we tried to get our board of realtors involved, thinking this is affecting real estate sales on Central Whidbey in a huge way. While sales have been increasing on the south end of Whidbey dramatically, our sales are declined on Central Whidbey. But this issue, as we've talked about, is a very sensitive issue, and people are afraid to join this issue on our side of it. Yeah, I mean, this is what's gone on.
Property base, if jet noise will do the
These are
property
sales from south of Coopville that have been going up over time, and the sales in Coopville are in the yellow figures that are going down over time. And so I don't know, to some extent I expect that's going to happen here, particularly on your southern parts of your islands that are more impacted by the noise. We've tried to get the realtors involved. I would have thought they would. Yeah. Again, they will not meet with us. They're not interested. They're embroiled in a controversy over noise disclosure now because they've been not fully disclosing.
They've been complicit.
They've been, complicit. Basically, the realtors, the Chambers of Commerce, the Navy, and our county commissioners in 2002 decided to water down the noise disclosure statement to the point that it says nothing. Basically, you might experience airport noise, and there's a whole another legal action, class action coming with the realtors and the real estate industry and all of that. So that's a whole other issue. So no, we have had no luck, but I think it could be different here, and it will be. I think it may be different here. The climate. So.
One of the reasons the realtors aren't on our side is self-interest. How does a realtor make money? Selling houses. otherwise known as churn. Okay, you all know what churn is, right? If somebody moves into a house, that realtor makes, or their company makes 6%. They hear the jets, they say, not good, they move out in 6 months. The realtor sells the house again. They make another 6%. New people move in. They say, not good, get me out of here. They sell the house again. 6%. Another 6%. So the realtors on Whidbey Island, when they hear a jet go over, they don't hear the roar, they hear ka-ching.
Well, the other thing is there's a lot of churn from Navy personnel because the Navy rebases their active duty members every 4 years. And so they're constantly buying and selling, and they're afraid. Everybody over there is afraid, not everybody, but the chamber and the real mainstream are afraid about the base closing. They're afraid there'll be fewer personnel at the base, and so that has affected their view on this issue.
Another thing that's happened on Whidbey Island, the Growlers have been very divisive on Whidbey Island. It has turned, families, and it's like the Civil War. I mean, it's surprising. Friends can't have conversations together because they're on other sides.
One city boycotting another.
And the city of the chamber, basically in Oak Harbor, said that they should boycott businesses in Coopville. And so.
And it's happened.
And it's happened. They sort of withdrew it, but then the businesses on Main Street in Coopville have been impacted. And, because the chamber basically didn't come out and say pro or con, I'm on either side. They stayed neutral, and still they got boycotted. So it's been very divisive.
Yeah, I mean, you have an example right here. Steve Worley writes for the newspaper. And there is a comment section.
Oh, yes.
After.
Yeah, right, yes, the comments, 70 comments, oh, they just attack people.
My name is Michael Munson. I am a terrorist, a commie, a red, a threat to every living being in Whidbey Island except Susie and Jackson, my dogs. And Jane.
And where do these comments show up?
On the end of his article.
Yes.
On the end of every article.
More than 70 comments, and they were not from people from San Juan Island. I mean, they
So
were
can you
all
imagine-
from
can
Whidbey
you
Island.
imagine the
And it was a
attacks-
San Juan article.
Oh, this is the online version.
It was on the Journal of San Juan
the
Island.
online version.
Yeah.
Oh, they got really nasty.
Let's get this more
Extremely
questions
nasty.
here. Yes, sir. Oh, man, you first?
Yeah.
Go ahead, sir, then I'll get you next. All right.
My question has to do with the training of people from other countries. Other countries. Right now, I know they have the Australians, but there's, as I understand it, plans for more countries to be trained in the use of this aircraft. Is that a particular target that's more likely to be picked off, so to say? As, I've heard the expression, it's the Navy's equivalent of a bake sale. To train people from other countries.
It helps Boeing sell planes.
I'm sure it does. Just wondering if there's a way to approach that as a kind of a separate issue.
Worth some thought. Yes, sir.
I was just curious about, it's been mentioned about the impacts on wildlife. Have you been able to access, like that kind of decibel that you're talking about for the animals who don't live in a house at all? So, like birds, deer, the wildlife that if their hearing goes, which they're incredibly dependent on in order to survive, even mate, because what I've noticed is that people actually get involved less about concern about other people and more involved in protecting innocence, the innocence. And nature is the innocent, and there's an awful lot of sensitivity there. So I just didn't know if there's resources out there that have already done that, and if that could be exploited more. And the other thing I want to throw in is has also there been anything increased
flights relative to fuel dumping and pollution.
Someone want to deal with it?
Well, I can answer about the environmental effect or impacts on the animals. The National Park System did a 71-page document studying impact on endangered species, but right down to the mouse, the field mouse in the ground, and how much, what decibel level they can tolerate before there is damage, before the eagles die, before the trumpeter swans won't come here anymore. The most sobering one, though, was the Friends of the Earth lawsuit, which stated the sonar, the levels, the decibel levels of the sonar we'll be using, and the number of takings of the 600,000 species of animals in the ocean. There are 70 orcas in this area, 75. The Navy has acknowledged that they will be taking, which means injuring or killing 50 of them in the next 5 years. They're going to be subjected to, the orcas are going to be, and the seals and all the other fish, to 235 decibels of sound in the water. At 210, their lungs and hearts explode. That's what we have to look forward to.
You have a second question.
Yeah, what was the second one?
Ladies first, all right.
Fuel dumping.
Well, wait, he has fuel dumping.
Yeah.
You know, we had our lawyer do a freedom of information request regarding their fuel dumping practices, because anecdotally, many people have seen it. People have had a sheen on their plants and on their cars and so forth, and the Navy denies doing it. They say they don't do it, and they didn't produce anything. We do know, we've had some data that we've collected just regarding the emissions. I mean, the emissions just from the jet engines are very toxic, and incredible amounts of chemicals are being distributed around our sky from their flying. But as far as fuel dumping, if anybody can catch that on camera and they actually witness it, or they find it on their plants or vegetation, gather a sample, and we want to take it to a lab and test it, and then confront them with that. So.
Cynthia.
Yeah, I just wanted to say on Lopez, we've been getting about 2 experiences a week where southeast Lopez, when the wind is coming at us from the southeast, and usually when they're doing the maintenance run-ups on the tarmac at all, we've been getting extremely toxic air on the south end of Lopez. And sometimes it lasts for an hour or 2. And I'm just thinking, I mean, it feels scary to breathe it. I have written in this last week to Frank James, our county health officer, as well as our county commissioners, because somebody needs to be doing serious air testing. I mean, I wish it was something we could put on a leaf, but you know, it's got to be real air testing, because if we're not getting it, somebody else is, and I bet there's health patterns that reflect that.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned that when they stopped flying at Coopville, they moved to, up to the main air base, and affecting a whole different bunch of people. I also heard you suggesting they moved to somewhere like Fallon, New Mexico, or somewhere like that. Well, there's people there too. There's way fewer of them. They have a really powerful senator, and they've been having their own problems with the Navy. So we have to be careful we don't sound like a bunch of NIMBYs and just move it out in the desert where it affects somebody else.
And that's this group, after some soul searching, reached a very principled decision. It said if it's not good for us, it's not good for other people in other places. And to the extent we've been able to, we've been looking at other options out of the desert, for instance. But we only have so much information, but I think everyone agrees the jets need to be where they don't fly over people or environmentally sensitive areas. And there are other options out there. There are communities that want these jets, that their actual operations are out in the desert and people don't live under the planes. But that's a point well taken. And the question is the Navy really considering those other places, or do they want the jets here because Rick Larson wants them here? Or the Chamber of Commerce wants them here. A few people who will benefit. Yes, ma'am.
There's been
documented cases of cancer, this area being a cancer cluster. And I know I just am recovering from acute lymphomic leukemia myself, but there's 2 other people who got ALL, as it's called, at the same time. This is a childhood disease, and it's weird to have 3 people on San Juan Island that had that same kind of leukemia at the same time. And I know Lopez has had its struggles and issues with cancer. I know there is a woman that is, I can't remember her name, but has done some presentations on looking at this place, at the islands, as being a place that has a higher than expected amounts of cancer. And, you know, when you talk about breathing in all those toxic chemicals, especially when you have a blood cancer that doesn't come from smoking or obesity or anything that's sort of obvious, you're looking for other things that might cause that. And I've just often wondered what kind of impact. That's certainly something that we should look at. And sort of have 3 things in a row, if you don't mind. I'll sort of link them. The other thing is that you probably know this about yourself, but you may not have ever mentioned this to anyone before because it's not something we talk about much, but there is a phenomenon known as highly sensitive people. And it doesn't mean that you're sensitive like if your friend makes a rude comment, you cry. It means you're sensitive to environmental impacts. And there's a reason why you live on an island. And, you know, a lot of us came here because islands kind of protect those people from the larger impacts. So I don't know, you know, that's not something you want to go and talk to the Navy about, being a highly sensitive person, but it's at least something we can talk about amongst ourselves and just recognize, because I think it links us to wildlife. It makes us recognize what wildlife feels more than the average human being. So that's another little piece of just, you know, and then
links you to children and old folks.
And children and old folks, exactly, yeah. You kind of get it.
A fetus.
You know?
Right.
Yeah, you get what that growler feels like in the pit of your stomach. You get what that feels like to feel overwhelmed by that noise in a way that an average person might not. And the third piece is that just ecologically, not to be a NIMBY, I understand that totally, which if you don't, or you're not familiar with that, it's not in my backyard. But in ecology, edges have way more biodiversity than areas that don't have edges. And so we have just a lot more biodiversity here than another area might have, because we do have water and, you know, water reflecting all that, whatever, but we have water and land and mountains, so we have a lot of edges. So we do have more at stake in a sense in terms of wildlife.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
A couple of brief comments. One, Shan, it's so wonderful to have you back among us. Shan has always had an ability to kind of see the environmental science that bubbles up below a lot of these popular, difficult public policy questions, so it's just terrific. My interest or my background in all of this has to do with those orcas, not the ones over there on turtleback, but the ones that are swimming around out there. And it's a long, long story which I won't go through. But one early piece was when a lot of people were trying to get the federal government finally decided to do endangered species protection. A lot of this got involved with what is called critical habitat. And one of the places that moved the lead was including Samuel. I'm not sure if you were on the board at that time, but the whale museum tried hard to get the outer coast put in as critical habitat, because we know the whales are out there, and we know that there may be threats to the whales out there. The story came through was the same kind of story we heard from you people. When you talk to people at NOAA, who are very nice, often young, environmentally oriented people trying to do what appear to be good things, they will tell you sotto voce that the fix was in, the Navy says you cannot do that. And so that was not put in. That was one thing. Another thing was 12 years ago, the Navy ran their guys brought the cruisers up the west side. When the whales were there, the whale observers were there, and my hydrophones were there. And that led to a lot of communication with the Navy. And I'm surprised that you have not been able to have what would appear to us to have been real communication. I, for a while, was on a first name basis. Hello, this is Jim. Oh, hi, Jim. And that was Admiral Simons, who was at that time the boss of all of this stuff, sitting down in Bremerton. We went down to meet people in from the Naval Research Laboratory to talk to us and to learn what we had learned from our underwater observations or listening to the whales. And out of that, we got an agreement from Admiral Jim that they wouldn't run those sonars in the inland waters. And he would talk to the Admiral of the Pacific Fleet or something, with some awful military acronym which was in Honolulu, and he'd get him to do it on the outer coast. Well, that did not happen. And as you mentioned, 2 years later, Admiral Jim, known to me as Jim, went away, and some unknown person came. And about that time, the submariners decided that they're not a part of the Navy. They should set stuff off. Our hydrophones all lit up saying, what is that? Took months to figure it out, but it was a submarine off of Port Angeles, and we had some more conversations. And then just a year and a half ago, our hydrophones picked up explosions, and we kind of figured out they were south of Victoria. And a few months later, a young whale showed up dead on the beaches at the mouth of the Columbia. You can go see the whales next door in the Whale Museum. And the report on that necropsy just came out a week or two ago, and they, according to the people who did the necropsy, cannot figure out, what killed this whale. The local people here, looking at the same data, seem to have some strong feelings that there was enough damage in the semicircular canals in the ear to suggest that blast damage could have played a role. Nobody knows, and that battle is still being politically fought. So all this not building a lot of confidence, I guess I would say, in the Navy. The last little comment is that the Navy, or the NOAA, will be opening up for public comment, again, this question of critical habitat, and we're going to make another effort to get the outer coast put in. Whether that'll work or not, I don't know, but it will be an effort to try to bring this conversation that you're having to the orcas from a sonar point of view.
Just so you'll know, the Navy's training and testing area, their plans, they will be detonating underwater explosives off of Oak Harbor into those waters. That's part of the training, that's part of the plan. If you look through all of these documents they put out, and you really have to wait till you'll find out details like that. That's how we found out a lot of our information. Go to the website. Pardon now? Yeah. So this training and testing, it's live ammunition, it's air to surface, air to air weapon systems being tested, and not one square mile has been set aside for marine sanctuary. That's part of the criticism of the Friends of the Earth and their Friends of San Juan's and their lawsuit against the National Marine Fisheries Service, who issued the permit. They got the information from the Navy. The Navy said, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to protect folks, and they gave them permits. But those are the Navy's plans, and all that's going to happen when people aren't watching. That's what I'm saying. They're doing all of this to people while we're watching. What are they going to do when no one's there? Yes, ma'am.
I think probably a number of us would like to know how your trip goes and what your responses are from the people you're going to be seeing in Washington.
It'll be on our website.
Okay, and I also want to say, some years ago, a group of us went for other reasons, an animal rights issue, thinking we would be able to see the very person that we've made appointments with, and really you see staff people, so.
But like PFC Wintergreen, a lot of times the staff person is the one that gets stuff done, so.
Yeah.
Some of the appointments we have are with staff, and we have been told, don't bother with Senator Murray because, she's extremely busy with the budget process, but please talk to so-and-so. And so we're aware of that.
Okay. Yes, sir, back here. And then I think first.
I'm Andy, I'm local. I think 20 to 25 years ago, the technology was offered up to quiet planes, and it was a simple method of putting foggers on the wing edge, and a super thick fog, like 50 or 100 times thicker than fog, makes an appreciable lowering of the decibels. Of course, there's a cost involved, and there's water that's got to be carried, so planes would be flying slower, hopefully making less noise. But because contractors jump at money, you know, we'd like to start a movement that says we're going to lower military spending 10% a year. So, you know, put 30% of everything in mothballs and soundproof the rest of it. But I'm concerned about the fish and the mammals. And just yesterday I saw a picture of a man ice fishing, and you're sitting there waiting for it because someone said this is great. And an orca comes up through the ice and sees the guy and is gone. I mean,
Did what?
ate a guy ice fishing.
Ate the guy?
It's fair.
Oh.
It's
Johnny was getting excited.
because in 3 times in the last week, I've seen this picture of orcas chasing a speedboat.
Yeah.
Has anyone seen that?
They're surfing.
And the word scary is mentioned in every time I've seen it, that it's scary to be chased by an orca.
Well, they didn't sound scared, the women that were, you know, oh, look, there's one, there's one.
The print.
Oh,
Not everyone listens.
Well, before we close, unless there's more questions, I do want to say one thing, and I'll just let Mike finish up. But in terms of what people can do, what you can do, what we can do, we've talked about writing letters to our elected officials. That's something, that's a gift, that's something you do. Participate in these environmental impact studies and statements, offer your comments. But there's more. And we're not going to put it all out there right now. There's something called direct action, where people can put their bodies out there.
Yes.
You can be seen, you can be heard, and, you know, let's come away from here with your email addresses, contact information, and when this organization decides to take an action, hopefully people will participate from all these areas where we've been, and we will make an impact, because, you know, it takes a lot of us to be heard, but writing letters is good, but that's not all there's going to be.
Jane has made me promise that she doesn't have to come down with bail money. So when we do our protest, so it'll be, I know, so.
We can get a fund together.
I know, so, you know, you might give her a nickel a quarter, you know, something like that for bail money. But we will be doing something.
Good.
One of the things that we had been waiting for them to start flying at OLF again, but we don't know when that'll happen. But everyone will be let know. We're not going to be quiet. We're going to be loud. I was saying, you know, a voice not raised is a voice not heard. Raise your voice. Please give us the postcards. We'll mail them for you. Yeah, Bonnie? Or you can give Bonnie. Give Bonnie the postcards. Anyone have anything else?
One of the things that I live, for those of you who don't know me, and I now live on North Whidbey, it's like heaven. And one of the things that we see down there in North Whidbey, for the past decade, the officers...
Do you happen to know that person's name who's done the health stuff?
don't want to live on Whidbey Island anymore for obvious
Okay,
reasons.
let me give you my email. You can email me, because we're really interested. We've started identifying some clusters in Central Whidbey.
And Anacortes now has 2 retired Navy officers on their town council. We have 2 Navy officers running on a Republican ticket for commissioner in Whidbey Island. What I'm seeing is that they're working on taking, moving into Anacortes because they don't want to be on Whidbey. Lopez and San Juan are not that far from the naval base, and it terrifies me to think that this island is a military island, but it is something that can happen very easily. I'm with Whidbey Noise Coalition. There are flyers on the back table. It's all your local elected officials. There are areas
because of the elected officials, made a difference. We are really fortunate when we had the gathering at the Brickworks on Thursday. Bob Jarman showed up, and he was the first elected official to stand up and say something to support the citizens. The elected officials on this island, the council members with the town council members and the mayor, they make us activists look like child's play. They have become so active in the programs that they have set up for you, for your community, to protect you from what could happen. Thank you.